When you close your eyes late at night and think of Sparta, what comes to mind are bronze shields, unyielding battle lines, and the legendary king who spilled his last drop of blood at Thermopylae. Yet hidden in the shadows of history lies another man bearing the name Leonidas. He did not perish amid spears and arrows. Instead, clad in Persian silk, a fabric the Spartans scorned, he wove cold intrigues deep within marble palaces. This is Leonidas II, an exile driven from his warlike homeland who clawed his way back to the throne from the darkness. Throughout his life, he defied ancient traditions, yet became the cruelest and most steadfast guardian of the old order. Tonight, by the glow of flickering flames, let us follow this tale and journey into the true story of his life. We shall see how a prince raised in foreign luxury unleashed a silent yet deadly power struggle within this ancient city ruled by two co-kings. When a young reformer sought to save a crumbling Sparta with lofty ideals, it was Leonidas II who quietly tightened the noose to strangle those dreams beneath the cover of night. This is no rousing heroic epic, but a cold game of human nature and destiny, slowly unfolding across the marble floors of the midnight hours. The story begins not with clashing weapons, but with olive trees swaying gently in the night wind across the plains of Laconia. Sparta operated under a unique system of dual kingship. Two royal families held twin thrones for generations, checking and balancing one another. When the young and ambitious Aegas IV ascended one throne, the aging, brooding Leonidas II sat across from him. Sparta was no longer the mighty military empire of old. Years of warfare and concentrated wealth had left fewer than 700 true citizens. Most people had lost their lands, struggling to survive in poverty and debt. Deeply troubled by this plight, the young Aegas IV resolved to launch radical reforms. He planned to cancel all debts and redistribute land fairly, hoping to restore the purity and glory of the age of Lycurgus. Such measures struck directly at the core interests of Sparta's nobles and wealthy elite. As the other king, Leonidas II watched the young ruler's passion with a faint, knowing smirk. Leonidas II was no native Spartan warrior. He had spent much of his early life immersed in the Persian-style courts of the Seleucid Empire. There, he learned to mask schemes with fragrant spices and hide daggers beneath silk robes, growing accustomed to the absolute authority and lavish lifestyle of Eastern monarchs. When he returned to Sparta to claim his crown, he brought with him a Persian wife, indulgent customs despised by his people, and profound skill in court intrigue. To the conservative nobles, who trembled at the thought of losing their possessions, this unconventional old king became their only hope. Inside the palace, dancing candlelight stretched Leonidas II's gaunt and stately figure. He began holding secret meetings with discontented nobles, weaving a web spun from self-interest, greed, and fear throughout Sparta's night. He told them that youthful ideals were nothing but naive fantasies. To shatter these illusions, they need only wait for a fatal excuse to brand the reformers as traitors to the state. Storms often arrive quietly, creeping through the gaps between age-old rituals and laws. Encouraged by the cheers of commoners, the young Aegas IV pressed forward. He turned to the ephors, officials who held the highest judicial power in the city, and forced the reform bills into effect. Leonidas II never confronted him with loud speeches in the public assembly. He knew that in Sparta, what truly killed men was not impassioned oratory, but ancient taboos carved into stone and parchment. To remove Leonidas II as an obstacle, Lysander, an ephor aligned with the reformers, unearthed a long-forgotten law. Members of the Spartan royal family were forbidden to marry foreign women or reside abroad for long periods. Leonidas II's years in the Persian court and his Persian wife became irrefutable evidence against him. It was a moonless night, and the stars glowed coldly across the deep blue sky. Temple priests gazed upward, seeking divine omens. By Spartan tradition, every 9 years, the ephors would sit and watch the stars on clear, moonless nights. If a shooting star streaked across the sky, it meant the king had offended the gods and must be suspended from power to await divine judgment. Lysander and the reformers claimed they had seen a falling star, declaring that the gods had turned against Leonidas II for wearing Persian silk. Faced with the pressure of religious authority and premeditated accusations, Leonidas II remained patient and restrained. He did not mobilize his guards or put up open resistance, choosing instead a dignified retreat. Slowly removing his ornate foreign robes, he donned a simple Spartan cloak and went alone to the temple of Athena for sanctuary. Inside the temple, he listened to the cheers of commoners outside and the slanders against his reputation, feeling no anger, only the bitter cold of a Laconian winter night. He understood that Agus IV's reforms had shaken far too many foundations. The people's fervor would fade as quickly as it had flared, and those who now stayed silent would become his pawns for revenge when the reckoning came. Soon afterward, under the cover of darkness, Leonidas too left Sparta silently with his eldest son Cleomenes, setting off into exile in Tegea. The days of exile were long and quiet. Cold mountain winds swept across Tegea, weathering Leonidas II's features further. Back in Sparta, without Leonidas II to keep him in check, Agus IV entered the most glorious yet dangerous period of his life. The reformers installed Cleombrotus, Leonidas II's son-in-law, on the vacant throne, aiming to turn both seats of power into tools for reform. Yet idealism is fatally flawed for its tendency to see the world as perfect. Agus IV cancelled all debts and burned every record of loans. Flames soared high in the public square that day, and commoners danced with joy, believing a new era had dawned. But when it came to the crucial next step of land redistribution, those who had benefited from the reforms began to make excuses and delay. They were happy to erase their own debts, but unwilling to share land with the poor. Meanwhile, summoned by an ally in need, Agus IV had to lead Sparta's finest young warriors to fight at the Isthmus of Corinth. The young king displayed impeccable military discipline and traditional Spartan bravery on the battlefield. He did not know, however, that the utopia built upon his ideals was collapsing behind him. Reformist officials left in the city grew corrupt and reckless. The common people, who had waited in hope, found themselves still landless amid growing chaos and disillusionment. Night after night, wealthy conservatives who had once hidden in the shadows sent messengers to Tegea. They carried gold, news of the turmoil in Sparta, and sealed letters swearing allegiance. Sitting beside a fireplace, Leonidas II watched the flames consume the scrolls, his expression utterly impassive. He waited for the moment when the people's faith in ideals died out and the nobles could no longer endure the chaos, the moment he would reclaim his throne. While Agus IV fought far to the north for the honor of his allies, the gates of Sparta were quietly opened one midnight. There were no fierce battles or deafening shouts. With mercenaries hired by gold, Leonidas II returned to Sparta's marble streets like a ghost. The air carried the distinctive scent of earth and bronze of Laconia, but this time, the old man exiled by Persia held the fate of the city in his hands. Commoners who had once cheered